Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D here on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. Pete Smith in along for the ride. Look, appreciate everybody. Everybody just seems to be coming out every night. The numbers keep growing. Extremely thankful here. We're trying to put together certainly, this video, nightly lineup for you guys every night. Certainly seems, that you're all enjoying it. We appreciate you all for coming to ride. Make sure subscribed on YouTube to the OBR and certainly over on at Twitch. And the support for the written content daily, certainly again, big thanks for everybody. And look, this is not going to stop between now and Thursday night in April when the Cleveland Browns are finally on the clock. These conversations will continue to go on, and, I guess rightfully so. Certainly a very impactful decision the Cleveland Browns will be making. But Pete, I think there's a divide here about, and this is maybe just from everybody. And, I can see each thought process going into this. Do Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have to take a quarterback? There's obviously a lot of people that believe that is the case. There's you who says, no, it's best player no matter what. There's me who believes, yes, it should be best player no matter what. But I can understand, the reasoning, behind why they need a quarterback. Certainly, again, and for the 100th time, which will be going to 1,000 times, everything went right for Cleveland Browns as far as getting away from Deshaun Watson, except what was available to them at the quarterback position. That's otherwise, and we wouldn't even be having these discussions. If it was last year, okay, I'll take him or him. Either way, I am good to go. It's not as simple this year. Certainly don't have the player pool to choose from. Now, for the Browns, what is best for them over the next few years? That also may not be what is the best situation for the two men currently in charge, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. But, and certainly active out on Twitter today was Pete. And I think one of the things I take from that I think you put out there that was probably the most impactful for me was, if it was just that simple and it was just that worth it, we wouldn't be having these discussions.
Yeah, the framing of the quarterback discussion isn't about the quarterbacks. It's entirely about what not taking a quarterback means. There's an element where, like, people are challenging you to a game of chicken where you're not brave enough to make a stupid decision, like, or that that they'll be fired if they don't do this, or nothing matters unless you have a quarterback. Well, one, that the Eagles should have proven that pretty thoroughly on in the Super Bowl, that yes, quarterback is important, but having a lot of great players is really, really useful. But also, like, nobody's saying quarterback X is the answer, because it's entirely the opposite, and that's not where you want to be. Like, if we were talking about last year's class, there'd be Caleb Williams is this good because Jaden Daniels is this good because Drake May is this good because. It's not. And the fact that that's not the case, I like, if you're asking me about Abdul Carter, I'd go on and on and on about all the good things he does and why he's that good and why you should take him. That's not the argument I'm hearing. I'm hearing everything in the inverse. And if that's where we're starting from, you're already in a bad spot. You're already in a situation where you're sort of losing the battle, because I'm not hearing anything about this. And most of the arguments end up becoming take whoever's there, which is insane, because the stylistic differences, it's very difficult for me to believe that teams are just be like, yeah, we love them all. Because, the quarterback position is just different. Like, Todd McShay, he mentions his co-host on the Ringer draft podcast thing. Talking about, they were discussing sort of having a discussion on if Shedeur or Jackson Dart is the second best quarterback. Personally, I'm in the Dart camp. I think they don't really take a firm stand either way, but ultimately the point they come away with is, like, so much of this depends on your personal preference. What do you want the quarterback to do? What do you want offense? And that has to be a part of this. So, like, it's not, well, you just take a quarterback and figure it out. That you have to want and believe in the guy you're taking, because if not, then what is the point?
Yeah, and look, especially, and I think there's also this point to it is if they don't take one this year and it doesn't go well, then they'll never get the opportunity maybe in 2026. And I know obviously you're a huge proponent of this, and the counter and caveat to that is, well, if you do take the guy at 2 and it doesn't work out and you fire everybody, basically the first year for the rookie quarterback, whatever he did doesn't matter, because basically now he's starting again from day one all over. And now you have to go, hopefully, identify the people that you feel are the best fit for him, but also hope that they agree to come work with you and work with said quarterback, which are a lot of hills to climb, Pete.
Well, we're no longer talking about what's the best head coach. We're talking about the best head coach that fits and wants to coach our particular quarterback, which I think is inherently a flawed premise. You want to take the best head coach. And, we get into this whole thing about what type of head coach you should hire. Do you want the leader of men? Do you want this, that, and the other thing? Well, if you draft a quarterback 2nd overall and then you fire the coach and you do basically are the Bears, now you have to do everything in your power to then make that quarterback work, or you don't, and then you give them the essential freedom to say, we're just going to move on and do our own thing, which is, the idea that you've completely wasted this massive asset to an opportunity to improve your team and get either a player that could be great, or use that pick to acquire multiple draft assets or players or whatever to enhance your team. To just be like, to cast that aside and suggest that's not a big deal is insane. But if we flash forward to the future and we say the Browns took a quarterback and they busted, one of the first things people will point to is, well, he had, 3 head coaches and 4 offenses and all this other stuff. Like you know this ahead of time, and yet you're arguing to sort of steer right into it. And again, some of this comes down to ownership. Like, if they want to take a quarterback and they believe in him, and if that's the case, so be it. But then Jimmy Haslam has to be willing to say, okay, we're making this decision. I'm going to stick with these guys for the next couple of years. So, this is the other problem you're going to run into, which is people who are advocating they take the quarterback are then also going to be, they should fire Kevin Stefanski if they don't do whatever they want them to do in the particular order. With these two things work against each other, unless he proves to be Matt Eberflus, which he's already proven he's not. You've got to stick with him and make sure it works, because you look at the teams who have gotten this thing right. Unless you're Washington and you just boom, it works out magically, and you've got borderline MVP candidate as a rookie. You're looking at Buffalo. You're looking at the Baltimore Ravens. You're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. Teams that, one, had winning records, traded up to get their guy, and then had processes that stayed in place. Their coaches stayed in place. Their assistants stayed in place. The offense stayed in place. Maybe they adapted a little bit, but ultimately they had a consistency to try to ensure as best as they could to make this work. So if we are already accepting that this is not last year's class, and you have all these people are coming out and saying, well, if these guys were in last year's class, maybe they'd be 4 or somewhere between, somewhere there to 7 in that quarterback class. And now you're adding an extra variable. You're making it even more difficult, because now you're asking them to do multiple offenses. You have put them in a position to fail, and everything you're doing at the quarterback position should be putting them into a position to succeed. It's inherently backward.
And everybody, you see, certainly, you're getting your top 50s, your top 100s of this draft class out, and Ward and Sanders are basically all up and down. And normally, and look, if they're a quarterback and that good, I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah. I think he has them at 10 and 11, which might be the highest, consensus of the two out of anybody to this point.
Kuiper's the highest. Kuiper's far away the highest.
Oh, good. Oh.
He's got I think he's got shooter 4, and I think Cam Ward is somewhere before 10.
Well, that's certainly a doozy there.
That's Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper loves the QBs.
Well, I mean, it's also, you got to keep in mind, yes, Mel does this for money, but Mel also, who's the...
No, I'm saying...
Mel sits with the owners. Mel sits with the owners, and he understands what sells to the owners.
That's not a knock on Mel Kiper. Just historically, he's always been a quarterback guy.
Yep, for good or for bad, certainly. And you see these guys all over the map, and that's what to tell you, like, where we talk about Abdul Carter is going to be the consensus, probably number one, number two, number three player on every single board there is. He probably, will not be any lower than that. But it's a sticky situation, certainly. For the Browns, as far as, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, because, you're trying to do what's right, certainly for your own good, for your own job security. You're trying to do what's right for this team, the 52 players that, will be on the roster besides whoever the quarterbacks are. The talks are going to go on. And look, if there is no reason to believe, in my opinion, that either one of these guys are a slam dunk. And that is even still why these conversations are here. If you had said last year, oh, it's Drake May, it's Jaden Daniels, because we know Caleb Williams is going one, be like, all right, well, what are we going to do with the other 11 draft choices in this draft? Because you would have been sold and ready to go either way. We're going to go a little further here. Latest Browns 3D joined here, Pete Smith. Again, appreciate everybody coming out every day, supporting all the work, the written, and of course the video work at night. Thank you again to everybody. We've been talking about it last week or so. New sponsor over here. Thrilled to have them. State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you are local to the Cleveland area, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. You want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, and hopefully in good times, and not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new, dependable time cutter, zero turn, genuine Toro, replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They are veteran-owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders, lifetime Browns fans, and proud supporters of all of us here at the OBR. Again, if you're local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Continuing on here, latest Browns 3D, Pete Smith in. Certainly the quarterback talk is, and it's funny because, we got a lot going on here. Free agency, certainly. Browns with money to spend if they don't lose their minds and trade their best asset, which is funny because all of a sudden those Myles Garrett conversations have kind of piped down a little bit, and I guess we're just going to argue about whether they should or shouldn't, or if they have to or they don't have to. Pete, is there an option that can be had before April, where all of a sudden you can now maybe talk about the Browns and look, I think the problem that both of you and I have is we don't believe Shedeur Sanders is an option at 33. We probably don't believe Jackson Dart is an option at 33. But is there, in your opinion, an option that can be had in March that can leave them the flexibility to truly go with who they believe the best asset is at number 2 come April?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone they're going to sign is going to be satisfying. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh, that's it, we're good. Like,
no, but I mean, is there something where it's, you know what? Yeah, it might be a better option than having to take a quarterback 25 picks too early at number 2.
Sure, all of them. But like, if you're asking me what I would do, if you're asking my preferred path is to sign Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins. I would take both of them. I look at what Daniel Jones had with the New York Giants. His supporting cast was awful, and there's plenty to criticize with Daniel Jones. But I think, and I've said this is regardless of who they have at quarterback, they have to be better on the line of scrimmage. They have to be able to run the ball, and ultimately they have to play good defense. I don't care who they get. I don't care if you get Cam Ward. I don't care if you get Sam Darnold, which isn't going to happen. But even if you do or trade for Matthew Stafford, I don't care. Also not going to happen. But even if you do any of those things, you still have to get the other things right. So I'm more interested in getting guys who can basically not kill you with negative plays that can move the offense. Daniel Jones has the ability to create with his legs. And I am partly because he costs nothing if he's cut, and partly because familiarity with Kevin Stefanski, and partly because I do believe that another year removed from the Achilles and the other injuries that he apparently suffered was dealing with the Atlanta Falcons, I think you can get something that approaches what you got in 2023 from Kirk Cousins. And if you go by those numbers, everybody would sign up for that immediately. And there's certainly a conversation to be had, and I think this applies to Darnold as well, that Minnesota is really, really good for the quarterback position. They've gotten it right in terms of setting those guys up for success. But if you get just approaching that from Kirk Cousins, everybody would sign up for that minute and we'd be done. But I want to have an insurance policy. I want to have options. I want to be in case somebody gets hurt. But I also want as many capable professionals as I can without breaking the bank. And I think Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins can do that. Now, can the Browns make that happen? To be determined. But that is my preferred route. Is that going to make everybody going to be, regaling that the Browns were able to pull this off? No, then they're going to have to prove it. But this is the situation they find themselves. So much of this is, to me, emulating what the Minnesota Vikings have been able to do and emulating what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been able to do this past year and emulating what the Browns were able to do in 2023. Get the rest of the teams to sort of be able to lift the quarterback up. And the Browns are able to do that without a running game in 2023. So I think there's a lot more upside and ways to make this thing easier on them. But if you can run the ball and play defense, the Browns can get to 500. And so much of this so much of this depends on your sort of viewpoint. If you believe that it had Jameis Winston played all 17 games that the Browns won 6 games, just let's say they go 6-11, then the Browns have to get basically 2 to 3 more wins to be at that 500 mark. If you suppose that if you ignore that and then you just go, well, they're 3-14 team, then they obviously have to win 5 or 6 games. I'm in the former camp. I think if Jameis Winston played the whole year, they're probably a 6 to 7 win team, even if it's 5. It's not, to me, a Herculean feat of strength to then get back up into sort of being competitive. And I think that's a disconnect for a lot of people. And that's with all the injuries that they had to deal with. They've got to get better luck with being healthy. They've just got to get their guys in the field. I mean, we are already way ahead of schedule in the sense that DeJuan Jones and Jack Conklin are both currently healthy, which is obviously a huge difference from last year. But if they can do those things, I think the Browns are infinitely more prepared to be a competitive football team. And it's the difference between, the drop off of an 8-game change from going 11 wins to 3. I don't think that's realistic. You can say they overachieved in 2023 and be perfectly fair. And you can say they grossly underachieved in 2024. That's also fair. I think the truth is probably a little bit close to the middle. And then if they can do smart things and improve on that they can sort of put themselves back in the conversation. And if they do that without sort of making that big splash at quarterback, then they can put themselves in the situation that we're talking about, where they are now where the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs were. We're now, and what we hope is a great quarterback class. We don't truly know, but from here, I already love it more than this year's class, where then you can go and get the guy you want and feel good about and have a much better sort of base to work with, as opposed to operating from a position of this guy has to come in and save us.
Well, and even now, when you spoke earlier, and you spoke certainly about how it worked for, you spoke how it worked for the Bills, you spoke about how it worked with the Ravens, you spoke about how it worked with the Chiefs. And keep in mind, in 2 of those instances, neither of the quarterbacks were asked to perform right away, even though they were actually coming into really good situations, good rosters. Chiefs didn't. Actually, the Chiefs didn't they? Chiefs made it to the playoffs the rookie year. Mahomes played, obviously, the final game. Lamar Jackson was obviously trended into playing time late in the season, but neither, were put into the, oh my God, you have to be the savior of this franchise from day one, which certainly benefited both guys as well. The Kirk Cousins things is interesting. The only thing that gives me maybe like a little bit of like the willies a little bit is you look at maybe, similar to, Russell Wilson last year. What's going to happen if he can't give you the full boatload? You know what I'm saying? Ideally, you're looking at 18, 19, 20 games. So, look, I've said it before, and, it's not that I'm like, yeah, man, Daniel Jones.
Right.
It's and I've had conversations with other people, and it's kind of like, well, Mom, if I have to eat vegetables, can I at least choose the vegetable I have to eat of the greens? I don't want any of them, but can I at least choose the one I have to? Pete, now the Philadelphia Eagles and their dominance on Sunday in winning the Super Bowl, and we all know Andrew Berry's certainly brief tenure there, and I think for a long time the Browns had part of this theory and path to success that Philadelphia believes in. They had that type of offensive line. The Browns' offensive line from 2020, for about 3-4 year stretch was about as good as you can expect from any NFL line to be continuously together. Certainly, that's probably still up in the air the way it's going to work out. Certainly a big decision for Joe Bitonio to make about whether or not he is going to come back and basically fire it up for one more year. And, as you saw it and listened to it when Joe stepped away, it's asking an awful lot of a gentleman to be, 320 pounds for, a decade and a half, the wear and tear on your body, not to mention you're crashing into other guys who weigh 320 pounds. Joe walks away, and that's fine. He's earned that. So we'll see the way it works out. And it could be a decision he already knows. It may not be a question of whether or not, he believes this team can go win 11 or 12 games next year. Because most of the time with these bigger guys, we'll see. Joe still looked like he was carrying a good amount of weight at the Pro Bowl. But if you remember, as we saw little glimpses of Joe after that season in 2017, it was kind of almost like it was a time lapse every time we saw Joe. It seemed like he was a little more slender with each time we saw him. And once you could see he was trying to take the weight off, you knew that the decision was probably already made. But the thing, and look, they tried it in 23, and I think they were pretty good, Pete, with the defensive line. Like you see that, even, there is some old school mentality in their approach to what they can believe to be successful. And, the drafting of Mike Hall last year, and ran it back with the defensive ends. Ended up trading Za'Darius. Obviously, why would you have not traded Za'Darius at that point? But and it's, I believe, again, it was Daniel Jeremiah, 24 defensive tackles to this point. He has graded and has as starting potential in this 2025 NFL draft, as opposed to 12 last year at this time. It's simple. It really is. And Pete, we've talked about this for years, and a lot of it was because the Browns just kind of expected Myles Garrett to be the defensive line. But it's, give me big, chubby guys who are very athletic, and whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side. And they had Kansas City in a stranglehold before Kansas City even realized basically that the game had begun. And it is the simplest of recipes, but big wins.
I mean, the Eagles have 2 superstar tackles. Like, nobody else has that. And
this is after they drafted Dillard, who turned out to be an all-class. I remember you came back from Mobile. You were all about him.
I love Dillard.
We talked to the Philadelphia people. They're like, he hasn't gotten physical with anybody yet on this entire roster.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go down as sort of like one of the great tackle tandems in NFL history. Like, that's very difficult to do, and obviously made a huge difference in that game. But
both are on Hall of Fame potential paths.
Yeah, no, I think both are going to end up in the Hall of Fame. But like, they are all. I mean, they got completely lucky with Jordan Mailata. I mean, good on them for sort of, leaving no stone unturned. They took.
That's what day 3 is all about. Take a flyer and say, hey, maybe this could be something, as opposed to taking the 23-year-old guy who stayed 2 extra years in college. But, another story, another day.
But it's just a continued investment. They use top 100 picks consistently and thoroughly to keep getting these guys, and they keep attacking, they keep attacking, they keep attacking. And ultimately, they are able to get guys. They're able to develop depth. They're able to sort of have a guy like a Cam Jurgens, or even Tyler Steen had to go into the Super Bowl and play when Mekhi Becton's knee was acting up. Like, you just keep adding, and in a game of scarcity in terms of linemen, it's a planet theory thing. There are only so many on the planet that can do it. You want to get as many as you can, and the Browns used to have this when they had guys like Hjalte Froholt, who's since signed, not only gone to Arizona but signed an extension. Obviously, they've had other guys that have sort of been able to step in and play for them. but that has got to be a mindset and continuing philosophy. And obviously they lost some of that when they made the Deshaun Watson trade, that they lose 7 picks. That could have been those guys, but they have managed to find guys, DeJuan Jones in the 4th round, injuries aside. I mean, that's the only reason that there's any questions with him. He's a starting tackle in the NFL. He is capable of playing starting tackle and playing at a pretty high level. Granted, he's got to improve his run blocking, but you would sign up for that all day. And they've got to continue to develop, deep, get into those guys, keep drafting them. And defensive line, certainly in that realm. I think defensive tackle, particularly those 2-gapping nose guys, they're really, really difficult to project for the NFL draft. And there's any number of times where prognosticators, myself included, have thought, oh man, this guy's going to go in the 1st round. It doesn't. And the one that always jumps out to me is Jordan Davis going like basically where they thought he would. The Eagles took him 13th. And then the dude from UConn, Travis Jones, athletically, Senior Bowl, he crushed everything. And then the Ravens get him in the 3rd round. Like, you just never know. And part of me wonders if because of those guys, I think Kenneth Grant will still go pretty early. Tyleik Williams could still go pretty early. But the sheer number of those may have teams going, listen, there's so many of these guys. We're going to take these other areas and just hang back. And we're going to pick up guys who can compete in 2-gap. And you can get like the kid from Louisville who's a Ivy League transfer who balled out this year. Or you can get the JJ, I think it's Peckwis from Ole Miss, who Ole Miss decided to use as a running back against Florida for like 20 carries. People want to be mad at Jackson Dart. Lane Kiffin's an absent in that game for that. But like some of these guys are going to go weird areas of the draft that you don't expect. You're going to be like, this guy's way better than this. And yet they're going to be available. Jamari Caldwell, the Oregon defensive tackle, was phenomenal for Houston before he transferred to Oregon. He didn't have a single sack. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and just 340 pounds, and he's spry, jumping all over the place. And now people are sort of scrambling to sort of rank him. The kid from Maryland, Jordan Phillips, is a redshirt sophomore. Again, has virtually no stats, but is just the proverbial brick house. And what are you going to do with these guys? But there's so many that's going to be really difficult. So teams are going to have to strategize how they want to do this. And then if you're the Browns, you've got Dalvin Jones, who's good and should continue to be good. You really got lucky or skill, whatever you want to put it, with Juwan Briggs, who they've seemed to have found in a guy who shined the last month of the season at a 20-snap rate. You got to see where he goes. But if you can get another one of those guys that can give you 20 snaps, then you can theoretically have your plan to move on sort of from Dalvin Tomlinson when they're ready to move on from him in maybe another year and just slide in, and now you're good to go. And you can take care of that position sort of taken care of. And that's hopefully the attitude they have, that they can continue to work to dominate the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. And what you said yourself with the Eagles doing that, that is such a huge advantage for them. That allowed them to sort of outclass the Chiefs, and the game was over. And yeah, like, don't get me wrong, Jalen Hurts had some great throws in that game, was terrific with his legs and stuff, but like Josh Sweat was the MVP of the game. Like that dominated. Milton Williams, these guys are both going to be free agents. They're going to both get a ton of bank. And it's the offensive line. These are the guys who carry the day for the Eagles. And that's the part where you sit there and go, yeah, I understand how important quarterback is. Don't get me wrong, but like, there are other ways to win, and the Eagles are showing it. Now the challenge is they're in the NFC and you're in the AFC. You've got the sort of the real gauntlet of quarterbacks, but there are other ways to win. If you can make quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes so uncomfortable, they look terrified, you're going to have a good day. And I hate the Steelers, but they were able to win 10 games because they're so good at that stuff. There's no reason you can't sort of aspire to do that and then figure out the quarterback as you go. And that's not a satisfying answer for people. But nobody's going to say, like, Pittsburgh Steelers fans are sitting, man, I hate this. We never win playoff games, and we're 10-6 every year. Then Browns fans, I wish we were the Steelers. Like, you got to walk before you can run here. So get to that point, then figure out your quarterback.
Yeah, like, I mean, just to put it in perspective, and I said this yesterday, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have two guys who had combined 4.5 sacks, a fumble recovery, and a Super Bowl win, and basically say, well, best of luck, guys. Because,
And the flip side, the Chiefs are going to lose Trey Smith.
Yep.
They're going to have their own issues to solve. Their whole thing now is going to be solving.
Kelsey's talking like a guy who's definitely retiring. Yes.
Yeah, and that, but I mean, like, again, yes, the quarterback position is certainly important but now they're going to be looking to reload on the line of scrimmage. And this was when the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers, that was the whole offseason for them. Protect Pat Mahomes, do all this other stuff. And granted, yes, the Browns need to find whatever their Pat Mahomes is going to be, but they've got to figure out that other stuff. And they've got to walk and chew gum at the same time with it. Evaluate quarterbacks. If they love one, great, but you've got to figure out this other stuff. And if you don't you don't love the quarterback, or he's picked one, you have to be able to do something else. And that's where the Browns have to be able to take care of these other issues.
And look, the thing is you have the ability to handle it all. If you don't nuke yourself or basically pull the, pin on the grenade and hold it in regards to number 95, they have the ability. 12 draft picks, can easily find another $89 million in cap space. So certainly more than, one way to skin a cat here for Cleveland. And at this point, I guess we got about another 2 months and change to see the way it all continues to flow out. He is Pete Smith. Appreciate him. Pete will be dropping. There will be a mock from Pete Smith tomorrow. I'm sure everybody will, jump to
lunch.
Yeah, I'm sure that, yes. So the comment section should be raging, I am sure. So of course, thanks Pete for coming by. The sport certainly for everybody, the written work here over at the OBR every day, the nightly video content lineup. The sport has been fantastic. We appreciate you all. Obviously that motivates us to continue to try to put out great work for each and every one of you that are coming through here. Make sure you are subscribed. The OBR on YouTube, and of course over on Twitch. Of course, thanks to the good folks, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, Browns 3D on the OBR, and we will talk to you tomorrow.